Well, all right. We don't really have like an introduction planned or anything, but should we kind of introduce ourselves?
I was thinking, should obviously like important things that we need to consider our cover. If we have like I don't know, like a photo, like some picture of us that probably should be our Christmas photo from years back, right?
That sounds good.
I think we'll find one that works.
Okay.
Um, and are we going to start off with the Reality Bites jingle, or is that are we not doing? Because I think it's appropriate.
Yeah. Yeah, I could put that in there for sure. Is that the name of this show?
I mean, I kind of think it's perfect. Reality Bites. It's not what you want; it's what you need.
And it's the reality television. That's fantastic. Okay.
I
That's
think it's
great.
perfect.
Okay.
Reality bites, they're not what you want, but what you need.
So we went to graduate school together. We're both psychologists, and we've been really wanting to like do a project together, but we haven't found a lot of overlapping interests. So this was a perfect project because I grew up in Salt Lake City. I'm a Real Housewife.
Uh-huh. I am
um,
too.
you're a big fan of the Real Housewife
Yes.
franchise. Is that fair to call it a franchise?
It is fair. And I am I an original fan. Like from the first season of the Real Housewives of Orange County from when I was in high school. So it was like a long time ago, over a decade, definitely over 10 years. So I've been around for a while in terms of being a fan.
I mean, this is basically our first collaborative effort since the Reality Bites commercial,
Uh huh.
which we can send you a link to.
Yeah.
And before that, a poster maybe. Okay.
I would like to think that maybe we could offer some insight from a psychological perspective on a show such as this, but who that let's lower the bar, and it's just two people talking about a show that they've watched together.
Sure. Yeah, we're not we're not acting in a professional capacity.
Okay, so I was really surprised by my level of interest in this show, and so I've told you, uh, Andy Pants, that I typically when Bravo introduces a new city, like a new group of women, um, into the Housewife franchise, it doesn't remain popular. Normally, it'll play for a season or two, and then it kind of dies down. There was the Real Housewives of DC, which highlighted. I think I might have told you the couple that years ago crashed. I think President Obama's inauguration ball.
I don't know about this.
There was yeah, they basically like crashed the White House, and it was a really big deal, and it was on the news, and so it kind of the overlap between what was happening in the news with what was being filmed on Real Housewives was really interesting. But I think maybe it lasted 2 seasons. There's the Real Housewives of Miami, same thing, didn't really last very long. So anytime they introduce like a new city, it it doesn't tend to gain a lot of traction, I think, with fans. And so I had my expectations were really low, but I was very pleasantly surprised. I was super into it the entire time. I thought it was fascinating. And it was also very different from any of the other Real Housewives seasons and cities and groups of women.
Really? Well, I was wondering. So, yeah, right. So, I've never watched an episode or of anyone before, and so I was wondering because to me, it didn't feel like the Salt Lake City I grew up in necessarily. So, I didn't feel immediately like, oh, I know these women. But how does it compare to other casts?
Well, so there the women that they showed, the focus was on religion, which is never something that was sort of the theme of the episode. Like
Yeah.
every woman sort of shared what her religion was, whether she was a Mormon or not. Like they shared their history there, and that has never happened on any, because it's just not. It doesn't really. Religion doesn't take a front seat in any of the other cities that it's.
Oh, interesting.
Um, and so I have this from watching, obviously, like everything about Bravo, all Real Housewives. Like each city has their own sort of energy, and that is representative of the city. So Real Housewives of New York, most of them aren't even married at this point. It's very fast paced. They're like really successful business women, and really independent, which I think sort of embodies New York City in general. Mm-hmm. Real Housewives of Orange County, they all are, housewives and wealthy and blonde, and it's a little. I would say that the arguments that they have, so like Real Housewives of New York, they argue if someone doesn't show up to their event that they threw, or if someone's competing with their brand. Like that's a typical point of drama in Real Housewives of New York. Real Housewives of Orange County, they argue if someone spoke poorly about someone else's husband. Like that's a typical argument. So okay. I feel like it's sort of embodies, each city. So Salt Lake City, the focus was on religion, and it's just that's never something that has really ever come up with any of the other housewives. So I thought that was cool, and just a unique sort of perspective of life that you don't see on reality television.
Yeah. Well, it is interesting because, and I'll be curious to see where it continues to come up, because they did talk about it a bit in each of their introductions, but I guess I didn't see it in their interactions yet. So I'm watching this episode, and I took little notes so I could keep track, because I didn't know what to expect. So I started writing down things like Jen is friends with Heather, because I thought, oh, they know each other. This will be important to make a note of. And I realized they all know each other. Yeah. So I erased those notes. But yeah, that's true, because so you have the former Mormon from Utah who's now Muslim. Uh-huh. You've got someone who's Jewish by heritage but converted to Mormonism, it looks like. That was Lisa. Whitney grew up in Utah, wanted the fairy tale Mormon wedding. She's the one who left the church, it sounds like.
Because she had an affair, right?
That's right. Yes, we were dating, or we were married to other people when we met. I'm rooting for her. So we've got Meredith, Jewish from Chicago, and I think that one will be very interesting, because I think she maybe had the least connection with the church in any way, and even Utah culture. So I'll be curious about that. And then Mary, who is Pentecostal, but very curious about her backstory. She was the one who was
married to her step-grandfather.
Her step-grandfather, yes. Yeah.
That was bizarre. Very, very interesting, very bizarre.
Yeah. And had some tough times in a hospital, it sounds like. And then and then Heather, who's pioneer ancestry Mormon.
I wrote that down too. That was something I wrote down because I wanted to ask what you thought about that. A pioneer ancestry Mormon.
It's interesting. I wouldn't have thought much of that as being a mainstream sort of thing, but I think it actually is. There's an organization called the Daughters of the Pioneers that my grandmother belonged to and used to talk about, and I have no idea what they did. I probably could have checked for this purpose, but so there is, there's sort of some pride in being the children of pioneers, I guess. And, we talk about crossing the plains and settling in Utah, and all of that is a big part of everything. The 24th of July is Pioneer Day in Utah, and it celebrates when they arrived in Utah Valley, and it's a state holiday. And so in Utah, fireworks are from July 4th to July 24th. There's just this block of celebration. So it's kind of interesting, though, because I think that there's this, it's not really very important. And there's a lot of pride in sort of converting to Mormonism at any time, right? Converting to the church is seen as really valid. But certainly I think it's talked about enough that there's pride in it.
Interesting. So I have some points that I wrote down that I wanted to get your opinion on.
Great. All right.
What did you think of the alcohol use happening?
I thought it was quite liberal. It doesn't surprise me anymore. So I thought it was interesting.
I thought it was funny. I think was it the pioneer Mormon? What's her name?
Heather.
Heather. So when Heather made some comment at party, I think it was Heather made some comment like everyone's lining up at the bar, but the Mormon party goers are getting a drink and then like going in the corner or some and make some comment about it's happening. It's just not in your face.
Yeah, I think that's what would have surprised me, but definitely is happening. And I think that's what it shows is you've got people who are sort of like comfortable with the drinking. You've got people who are going to drink but are sort of like doing some social distancing or like, they're navigating like the social implications of that. And I think she described them as like hiding in the corner or something, or like, covert drinkers. Or maybe they're ordering like, Diet Coke and drinking in the corner. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. What was the other question that I had? I thought was really interesting. Oh, so I wanted your thoughts on, they touched on I guess, the way that the Mormon faith has, I guess, accepted Black people, people of color.
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting, and I kind of wanted your take on that.
Right. Well, so she didn't sort of expound on it well, but so this was Jen and that was really interesting too. She said at one point, she said, in Utah, I'm Black because they don't know better. Which I think is probably reflective of the culture. She's married to a Black man and she's not white. And so it's sort of like, that's enough. But she said she's originally from Hawaii, Tongan and Hawaiian. So what this was there was some kind of priesthood ban, and Black men couldn't get the priesthood until 1978. And I mean, it's pretty scandalous, I think, when it's talked about now as far as like why that was the case. And there's I don't know, there's probably a lot more to say about that as far as like background in the church, but that it seems to have come into play. And recently the church has come out to say certain things about it, sort of like, we don't know where that came from. We don't think that it was the right thing to do. Condemning racism, basically. But yeah, 1978, pretty late in the civil rights movement, before they were allowing Black men to be ordained into the priesthood.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think that, so Bravo, and I could be off on this, like some of the cities of the Housewife franchise have been criticized by their lack of diversity in the cast. So like, I mean, and even extending past the Real Housewives, shows like Southern Charm, it's in the past seasons, all white people that have like these long family histories in the Confederacy, basically, like their family members. And the Real Housewives themselves, they have, most of the women are white except for the Real Housewives of Atlanta and the Real Housewives of the Potomac, where there's maybe a majority of the cast are Black women, or women of color. And so it was interesting to me then that the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City had any diversity. Like, I kind of wasn't really, one, just sort of, I guess, and this is not great, but I just sort of assumed that the cast would be mostly white. And, but Bravo did seem to make an effort to have more of a diverse cast, which I thought was interesting. And then bringing that also into the focus somewhat in the episode, I thought was also different from what they have done in the past in other seasons. So
Yeah, I'll be curious to know if they say more about it or if that comes up more. They talk about it, because that is, I mean, my experience growing up in Utah. Also, there was one black guy that I know of that went to my junior high, and I remember them vividly just because there were so few. And so that doesn't surprise me that you were expecting a lot of white.
I was expecting a lot of white ladies. You know what was surprising to me though was that so I was watching with David, my husband, and he made a couple comments. I don't remember who it was he was referring to. It might not have even been a cast member. It might have been just like a fellow party goer. But he was like, she's on her way to morphing into a cat, meaning like all of her plastic surgery. So he's like, she's working towards that. And the plastic surgery was really surprising to me. And I don't know why that was. And again, these are sort of, I guess, preconceived notions I have about Mormons, like it just, and Mormon women. And this, so the idea that there was any like mention, one of them owns like a plastic surgery office or works for one or something. But then they made a couple references about like more in the Mormon faith and culture, the idea that you can like strive or achieve perfection was, and so again, I don't know. I guess I just also didn't equate that with a perfect face. Like that wasn't.
I agree. I don't think that's the way most, or whatever, like I don't think that would really be the way to interpret that belief. But it's true. I mean, you're surprised, meaning like, what did you expect? Or what was surprising about that? I guess I assume.
I guess I just think, so I grew up Episcopalian and maybe like other denominations like here sprinkled throughout my life. And the idea that, I don't know, it's sort of, when you think of plastic surgery, I guess you think of there's some like vanity component there that I think what I would assume goes against like most religious faiths in general, that it's not something that maybe you overtly emphasize. Right. And so that was kind of funny to me, and definitely not something that I thought would, I don't know, I just didn't really, I was just surprised. And maybe I haven't unpacked it entirely, but that was sort of
no, I'm glad you said that, because I think vanity is the value that comes into question, because I think most religious people would sort of say, yeah, like, okay, yeah, vanity has been criticized. I don't know that I heard a lot about vanity, culturally or in the church. So it's interesting that that's not emphasized too much, or at least I didn't hear it. So perfection is emphasized, but not physical perfection.
I remember, and this is again going to like my own like religious experiences growing up, but I remember when I was a kiddo going to church, and the pastor's wife had very clearly had some breast augmentation at some point, and the other women were talking about. I remember I was younger, but I remember hearing it like, and they were very judgmental and critical of it. And this was in Ponte Vedra Beach, Florida, and so it was a really wealthy, predominantly white community where I don't know, like a majority of the women had some kind of plastic surgery, but in the church, it was, well, the pastor's wife had a boob job, and people were upset about that. So,
I mean, it's true. I kind of think of plastic surgery as being sort of like a worldly kind of ambition or whatever.
Yeah.
But I will say, and I don't know, sort of like where she was coming from on this. There is some emphasis around perfection in Mormonism, and it's more like, there's the scripture, "Be therefore perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect," or something like that. And so it's it's like a godly perfection, but the idea is that you're always striving toward it. Um, and so it's interesting to think about how that might translate. I don't know that Mormon women are more likely to get plastic surgery, but the fact that they seem to not be dissuaded at all is interesting. For example, like I've never heard a criticism about women dyeing their hair in the church or anything like that. So like dyeing your hair has always been okay. So things that are kind of vanity type things, I think, are pretty acceptable, as long as they're not bizarre colors and stuff like that. Might be where people get a little judgmental.
Uh-huh.
Women in my family have eyebrows and make an eyeliner tattooed on and things like that that are just sort of seen as like, that's okay. And there is discussion about tattoos, but tattoo for vanity is okay. So there is something like in the culture where it's just fine or nobody's saying anything about it. I don't know.
Interesting. Yeah, I thought those were things that I made note of that I thought were, again, points of interest.
Yeah.
The other, so I will be better next time with names, but was it Mary who married her grandfather?
Yes.
So strange, very strange. Her whole storyline was odd to me. I mean, obviously, like my sister sent me this Instagram post that was like alternative taglines for Mary. And it was all, of course, all puns about like being her own grandmother or something, and like marrying her grandfather. Like, you fed me as a baby, and now it's my turn to feed you.
No.
Stuff like that.
So, Mary, I'm glad you said that. I want to kind of go through these taglines, but Mary had the most confusing one to me, which was, I love God, but I will read you like a scripture. What does that mean?
I don't know. I love a good housewife tagline, and from my like our time in grad school, I come up like that is a pastime for me. I will come up with a great housewife tagline for someone. There are a lot of puns on a good read, reading someone, book puns, going back to reading someone. That I did not understand that. Like, I don't even know. I don't know how to. I can't. I don't know how to interpret that.
I mean, to read a person, what does that mean, though? Is it to
like you have their number? You know what's really going on.
God? Okay.
I see you for what you are.
And so to do that like scripture means clearly, or
I don't know. I don't know how to interpret that, and I'm pretty good at interpreting the housewife taglines, and I don't know what she was meaning exactly. So one thing that's fun about the housewife taglines that I learned is that the women submit either multiple taglines or they write some, like personal statement kind of thing, and Bravo chooses what comes out of it as their tagline, and then they record it. So yeah, so it's not like they're like, this is the one I want. I think that they present like multiple taglines, or they write something and again it's kind of generated for them. So yeah.
Okay, I do want to talk about Mary, but just because we did Heather a little bit, who's the plastic surgeon with the 3 daughters. The Mormon royalty is all very interesting. The Howard Hughes connection. I've heard that spoken. Oh, Howard Hughes loved the Mormons. That was like, oh, that's cool. But her tagline was just like, so her tagline was actually very decent, I thought. And so the way she said it was very confusing to me. Just like my pioneer ancestors, I'm trying to blaze a new trail. And I was like, that was good. Spoken very sassy. But yeah, I was with her on that.
I agree.
So Mary, yeah, what were your reactions to Mary?
I don't know. I thought the whole storyline about her being able to smell when someone's been at a hospital was fascinating to me, and I had a lot of questions. And then the other, which again I cannot remember what was the name of the other housewife who
was at the hospital, Jen.
So Jen's aunt had just lost her legs, and that's why it sounded like probably a traumatic familial experience, and she, I guess, smelled like the hospital and was, if someone, I guess if I went to the hospital and even if I lost a family member and someone was like, you smell like hospital, I'd be like, no shit, I was just at a hospital. Like,
Right.
I don't know. I guess I just wouldn't. She was really upset by that, which I thought was interesting, but also it was a very strange thing to say that someone smells like the hospital. But then she said, I don't remember. And then I really liked when they brought in the third party to be like, you were there. What did you say? And then Mary was basically like, get out. And she's like, you brought her in. So then you can't be like, you didn't say what I wanted you to say. So it's time for you to leave now. I thought very intense, and strange. I thought very strange. I just, everything about her. There was nothing to me that I was like, this is someone I relate to and would also want to hang out with. So.
Interesting. I'm curious about her. I think I can say right now I don't like anyone. Maybe. I mean, I don't dislike anyone, maybe. But with Mary, I'm curious about like her clothing. I'm very interested in somebody who's sort of like naming her brands and talking about them. Not interested in like, way I want to be her friend. But I'm just curious about that and then sort of she says what she means, and I'm like, oh, am I going to think this is like bluntness, which is okay, or is it going to be over the top? Because that is how I heard that, is like, oh, it smells like hospital in here, to me is barely a faux pas. It's kind of a weird thing because
it's strange.
Yeah, like I guess if I said it smells like pee in here, somebody might have just peed themselves and that would be offensive. But like I don't know, like maybe you just name a smell when you smell it, which I thought was fairly innocent.
Also, if she really did smell hospital, highly impressive. Like to me, I think that's a little impressive. If you can smell someone, I work at a hospital, and like with COVID and stuff, I've been working from home, but normally I'm going to a hospital 4 out of 5 days a week, and I don't think my husband has ever been like, you smell like hospital.
That's true. Huh. I was just picturing it just, like permeating into her clothing or something. That's true. So more to come on her like extrasensory smell.
I'm fascinated by it. I hope it comes back.
Now, if you knew, I don't know, like here's the other thing though, like if I knew that you were attending to a relative who was having her legs amputated and it was distressing for you, if I like knew that backstory and then you came rolling into a dinner and I was like, smells like hospital, like maybe there's an extra layer of that being insensitive. Yeah. I don't know if she knew, but if she didn't really know, my opinion is Jen's taken this too hard.
I think
However,
so too.
However, when she tried to get her apology Mary really made it worse in unnecessary ways.
Yes.
She starts with, I'm sensitive to hospital smells and I didn't say that. And I'm like, what is it? Which is it? What do we... And then she's calling whoever over and I don't know why. And when she gets there, I think I now know why, because she's on Jen's side. She comes in, oh, you said that. So anyway, I'm curious to see how that all plays out. I'm sure it's going to be great.
Oh, I'm sure it's going to be excellent. Yes, she was interesting, I thought. I also appreciated the drama between Heather and someone else.
Maybe
we knew each other in college. Like we were friends in college, and I thought that was really funny to me.
Yeah.
Also sort of strange. That is more in line with a typical housewife argument, though. The hospital smell was not. Like the whole idea, like you did know me. That has come up in other seasons in other cities. So I think the Real Housewives of Potomac, there are 2 women that argue like we have met each other multiple times, and you act like you've met me for the first time each time, and you know me. So like this is not a new argument to count like we are friends, but the hospital smell for sure is
Well,
not common.
so what do you tell me about that pattern? What is this pattern? Is that how is that being weaponized? The I know you, I don't know you. What's even happening there?
I think it's a big power play. It's like
Huh.
I don't know. I don't remember you. You're insignificant, and therefore you're insignificant. And oh, that's so nice that you remember me. That's really cute, and that's. I think it's a mega power play, and then and we walked past each other, and someone snubbed the other. And what's funny is that they replayed it on Bravo at the party,
Hmm.
and I could not, and maybe this was me just not paying a close enough attention, but I really couldn't tell who snubbed who. I was like, even when they replayed it, I was like, who? They both seemed kind of callous or cold towards each other. So who pulled away from who?
I didn't see either. I know they replayed it, and I was like misunderstanding who snubbed who until afterward, and then I was just like, "Oh, I guess it was that." But like, it wasn't clear to me what had happened at all.
I don't know who snubbed who. It looked like maybe Heather saw her and was mad and pulled away.
That's what I thought.
That's what. But then when they replayed it, I second guessed myself. I thought, I don't know. It could be maybe it would make more sense that the other woman snubbed Heather because she's the one who's saying, "I don't know you." I don't know. But it is a big power play.
Hmm.
It's basically saying that's super cute that you remembered me in college. But also, Heather kept saying they were friends. And I thought, is friends too strong of a word? It sounds like it's a strong word. And then when the other housewife commented that Heather was, I forgot what she kept saying. Like she was like a hoo hoo girl, or like
Right.
basically, which again, I thought was really funny,
Yeah.
as especially because she's the pioneer Mormon woman. So
Right.
it probably was a bigger dig, I would think.
Well, yeah. So here's how I saw that. I mean, it was interesting because on the one hand, this power play of saying I don't know her very well. I think I heard that first, and then Heather's reaction to it, and it made me wonder. Like, is it also like I think that's what you're saying? Is it also a power play to say like, oh, we go way back when you really aren't a part of somebody's life? Because I think that people have a tendency to do that as well, is with
Hmm.
sort of like proximity, popularity by proximity.
Yes. Yeah. But so that's sort of, I feel like, an old housewife theme. And I will be curious to see just how the drama with all the ladies unfold.
Uh,
Whether it's because obviously like you can't reinvent the wheel, like this has been around for so long, so there's going to be themes that come up. Like they kind of alluded, the woman who, it was her birthday party and her husband was in Chicago, like and so like the whole like, if it were my birthday I would make sure my husband was there, like that's also like
mm,
an old theme. Like your husband's not supporting you is a common theme
uh,
amongst the housewives. Like, so
it's
I'll be curious.
Yeah, I really did like, though. I thought it was funny, and it seemed to be sort of like universally accepted that Jen threw the party for herself. Had her own name in flower petals to introduce the venue, kind of thing. And I think it was
I get all the names wrong.
Meredith.
I will be better next time. Better with the
No,
names next time.
Meredith was the one who's Jewish and from Chicago. I thought her reaction was great too, because she knew and she just
Yeah.
laughed at it. I was like, I think I might like her.
Yeah, I agree. I thought so too. I was like, she's handling it very well, which
Right.
is sort of unhousewife of her,
Uh,
because a lot of times it'd be common, I feel like, for someone to be really upset by that. But she seemed really chill about it, I thought.
so anyway, any other thoughts on the Polynesian dancers? Because she wanted to incorporate part of her heritage, and then somebody asked her, "Does that have anything to do with Meredith?" And she was sort of like, no." Shameless. Love it. Love it.
No, I thought it was great.
Lisa, I think this one's going to be interesting. So it seemed to me this is something that Kim and I discussed, which was what everyone did say about their religion and who was still in the church and who wasn't. It wasn't always clear because Lisa is the one who owns several tequila liquor brands.
Yes.
And she talked in a way that made me think she's still actively participating in the church, because she was sort of like, if people care, I don't know, which is kind of, I read that as she's still in, so we'll see.
Uh-huh.
But then, like, also the conversation in the car, husband's like, I'm getting 2 new tattoos. And I'm like, whoa, episode 1, we're getting there. Because that's one of the...
what I thought, yes. And they went to like 5 fast food places.
Because I don't cook. I don't make them breakfast in the morning. I like the way I am. Yeah, Lisa, I'm warming to her quickly.
Uh-huh.
Whitney, the rose isn't afraid to handle a little prick. Classy.
Uh-huh.
I'll be curious to hear more about how she's doing. She seems to be like a little bit angry with the church, and so that will come up.
Uh-huh.
And then, yeah, I think that's everyone. And then Heather, I'm not sure what her complete relationship is with that. So she talked about gravitating to all the things that are not what a good Mormon is, which I thought was an accurate kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
Oh, one other part, they discussed the honor code. And that is, the honor code is, to be a BYU student, you have to adhere to the honor code.
So I did know that because we have a friend, right?
Oh, yeah.
That went to
our mutual friend, another psychologist.
Another psychologist that I think talked about it, right? Or that's how I have some knowledge that I don't think I knew before that was a thing. Because I went to University of Florida for undergrad. That was now happening.
So to attend BYU, which is like the church-owned school, to attend BYU, you can't have sexual relationship outside of marriage. You can't be in a same-sex relationship. You can't have any alcohol. You can't have facial hair on campus, which is pretty interesting, unless you can get a special beard permit if you're like an actor or you have a condition.
Really? You have to get a permit?
Yeah.
That's wild.
I never could have done that. I have a beard like 60% of the time, so there's no way. And then a couple of other things, like you have to take religious classes or whatever. So people will get into trouble, if they go to a party and they drink and the honor code office finds out, it's like the Gestapo. It's the way some people talk about it. Apparently, I didn't attend BYU. But as far as like what you can and can't do. So being sort of like a party Mormon at BYU would be like a big breach of rules, So they talked about that honor code, and that's sort of like, that level to attend BYU.
Interesting. I feel like I'm very excited about this season. So I think it's good. And I'm really happy that you're finally watching any Real Housewife show, which I feel like is a win for me.
Totally. I mean, I guess, and we can talk about this in another episode. Like, I'm not sure what people see in it. I sort of hate it as I watch it.
I told you that. I said I feel like you will hate it and love it at the same time, or like it, hate it and like it at the same time.
Totally entertained, but yeah, we'll see.
We'll talk about that next episode.
To be continued. Yeah, sounds good.
All right.
Well, good to see you. Thanks for watching and listening, folks, and make sure to tune in next time on Reality Bites.
It's Reality Bites. It's not what you want. It's what you need.
Yeah, great. Perfect.
All
right. Well, we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Reality Bites. They're not what you want, but what you need.